So for this episode, I'm going to talk about a bunch of Newgrounds games. There's going to be a lean towards stuff that I remember from the site, but there's also going to be stuff that is just well established that everybody knows. And also, I just want to say as a disclaimer, there's no Friday Night Funkin' in this because I haven't played that game. I know, sacrilege of the highest order, but I'm thinking of saving that for another time. Stay tuned if you want to see what happens there. Created by Tom Fulp and Dan Paladin, this game was uploaded in 2005 and is still considered as one of the best quality games on the site. The game follows this little purple guy whose dad leaves him off at a playground to make some friends. The game is a beat-em-up style game like Streets of Rage or Final Fight, where you progress through a side-scrolling stage and every time you encounter a group of enemies, the game stops you and you need to defeat them all before progressing. I'll be honest in saying that I'm not the biggest fan of beat-em-up games for the simple reason that I just suck at them, but this is one that I actually find fun because I love Dan Paladin's art style for one, and it's the same kind of art style that you see in all the other games that he and Tom made, like Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theater. The game is also just funny with its tone. It has this cutesy art style, but you're beating up kids and just being a menace to everybody around you, so I thought that was pretty fun. Regardless of how I feel about it though, it's clear this one has its place in Newgrounds history. The main characters of this game are often lumped into the same group of iconic Newgrounds characters that are often referred to as the Gang. Basically a selection of characters from creations that people generally see as being really influential on the site, like Pico and Salad Fingers. Created by Felix Weisner, who goes by YC on Newgrounds in October of 2009. Within a week, this game was front-paged on the site and took first place for Weekly User's Choice Award. YC was inspired to make the game after he saw this fake photo of a diver being attacked by a shark. I mean, if you say it's fake, I don't know, man. This game is the definition of simplicity is beauty, as there's not much to the controls other than moving up and down in the water as well as biting. You can launch yourself out of the water to attack things in the air, and the main goal is to cause as much mayhem as possible before the timer runs out. There's a high score system, although I don't think the leaderboards work anymore since I guess they must have been saved to the Flash version of the game, and they got lost when Flash shut down. If someone knows I'm wrong on this, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, that's just one of the many things that was lost when Flash died, unfortunately. Also, if there was an award for best title menu music for a game, I would vote this one for the winner because holy shit, this music slaps. The game is overall a fantastic addition to the Newgrounds roster of classic games, and the creator YC went on to make a number of sequels, including Sydney Shark, New York Shark, Medieval Shark, and a ton more. Sadly though, YC would pass away suddenly in 2023. He was 46 years old, and there didn't seem to be an apparent cause for his death. Shortly after, many fans would create fan art depicting one of his popular characters, Castle Cat, and a wall banner featuring the character would be published for the site in 2024. His lasting impact with this game will still be felt for years to come, I feel. In fact, there's something strangely familiar about this game. Your goal is to cause as much violence as possible. There's a high score system. The overall aesthetic and music choice leans towards 80s retro wave. It takes place in Miami. Meat Boy was created by Ed McMillan, who goes by Blue Baby on Newgrounds, and this has got to be one of the biggest indie games that Newgrounds has ever produced. Uploaded in 2008, this game served as the demo for what Super Meat Boy would become, a frustrating but fair platformer that tests your skills and throws obstacles at you left and right to try and get past. There's almost always a very specific way to get through each level, and it becomes about how you try to figure out how to execute the right movements and jumps at the right times to progress through the game. The art style of this demo is very different from Super Meat Boy. This one has a pixelated style, which confused me at first because I always imagined Meat Boy looking like this. After McMillan made the demo, he would later set up the game studio Team Meat, and the full version of Super Meat Boy was released in October of 2010. Some people say Meat Boy is supposed to be like the Newgrounds equivalent of Mario, and even the name Super Meat Boy as an acronym spells SMB, like Super Mario Bros. Meat Boy is a classic and one of the most iconic indie games of the 2000s. This is a game that came out in the prime of my time on Newgrounds, 2010, although sadly I never played it back in the day. For the time, this was one of the biggest, loudest, nastiest, most action-packed Flash games of its time, as it pushed the limits of what you could do in Flash. Having a 3D-looking environment in a Flash game wasn't common, and the speed that the game ran at was unlike anything seen in any Flash game of the time. The game is made by Evil Dog in collaboration with artist Sick Death Fiend, who's known for making a lot of violent animations on the site, which is pretty cool. The game has you take control of a mechanic whose name changes for some reason as you play the game. At the beginning he's referred to as Don Kreisman, but then later on he's called John. I don't know what's up with that, but anyway, the game begins and you see Don/John listening to a radio broadcast that says zombies are rampaging through the city. You know, usual zombie story. Then he decides, after an ever so subtle reference is thrown in,
Walking Dead? Shit, I'm not staying here.
that he should GTFO, and the game throws you behind the wheel of his car. From here, the game shows you the basics of how to play, accelerating, moving left and right, typical stuff. The goal is to escape the city, and along the way you have to run down zombies to get points while avoiding civilians who you get penalties for if you run them down. Your car is pretty weak at the start, and a big part of the game is upgrading it with the points you get from killing zombies. Once your car gets destroyed, you're brought back to the garage menu and you can upgrade it in various ways, and you can also upgrade body armor for yourself for when the military eventually comes after you, because, like every zombie movie, there's a whole quarantine thing. I guess this guy did his own research and figured the virus wasn't going to spread if he got out. He's just asking questions, bro. They made a few sequels as well. In 2013 there was Road of the Dead 2, which had the same basic formula as the first one, but with a few improvements and additions. And it follows a different storyline, with two soldiers being the central characters instead of the mechanic. There was Lab of the Dead and Range of the Dead, which I haven't played, and what is probably the best in the series, in my opinion, Segway of the Dead. Now this was a big deal Flash game. This was one that everybody played at some point. It was super popular. Developed by Runow in 2009, this was one of the most fleshed out games made in Flash for its time. It featured a full story mode and levels on par with anything you'd see in an official Mario game. Different power-ups, multiple characters, the flood thing from Mario Sunshine, a level editor, and lots of secrets and things to find in the levels and in Peach's castle, which serves as the hub between levels. The game is somewhat like a mix between Mario 64, Galaxy, and the classic Mario side-scrollers. Each level is unique and original, and they included levels recreated from other games like Bob-omb Battlefield and Hazy Maze Cave. They took these 3D Mario levels and gave them a twist by recreating them in 2D, so it's like exploring a familiar place in a totally different way. As I was making this series, the game's actually been taken down from Newgrounds, so I don't know what's happening there. Maybe Nintendo got wind of the game after all this time. I mean, it wouldn't surprise anybody with how they handle business, so I've actually been playing this one on the Flashpoint archive, where thankfully it's still functional. Still though, it sucks that such a big part of Flash history got taken off the site. Maybe someday Nintendo will come to its senses, but I won't hold my breath. This was another awesome zombie game that pushed the limits of the Flash software back in the day. It was made by a guy named Chris, who goes by Con Artists on the site. The first game was uploaded in April of 2007 and got front page the same day it was uploaded. The game is a bit linear, but the core gameplay loop was as addicting as ever. I don't know how Chris managed to make such an amazing game given the restrictions of Flash he had to work with, but he really knocked it out of the park with this one. The game is similar to a tower defense game, which were already popular games to make in Flash at the time, where you're on a 2D plane with enemies coming towards you in one or more directions, and you need to defend your structure from being destroyed. The game also includes some strategy elements where you have to decide on what to spend your time doing in between defending your base, whether to look for weapons, survivors, or rebuild your barricade when it gets damaged. The game's not too long, but it gets pretty challenging towards the latter half, and you need to really think about how you want to spend your time in between rounds to stay on top of things. There is some RNG to the game too, so it's never guaranteed you'll make it even if you're being smart about things. The sequel came around in 2008, and it addressed the linear nature of the first game by reworking the scavenging and survivor gathering system in the game, and it added a new feature where you could set traps to help deal with the zombies. While it does still feel very similar to the first game, I would say it's more like it's a fully fleshed out version of the first game, while the first game was more like the core proof of concept. Chris would give the series one more go in Flash in 2011 with The Last Stand Union City. This was a big departure from the first two games, as now you can freely explore a 2D world and scavenge for supplies and fight zombies head on with ranged and melee weapons. The game also includes an RPG leveling system and upgrades you can buy with experience points. There's tons of buildings and places to explore, and it's one of those Flash games that's filled with so much content that it's fit to compete with some professional indie games. Chris would set up the game studio Con Artist Games, which released the Last Stand Legacy Collection on Steam, which was the first 3 games packaged together so they could be played without the use of Flash. They also made The Last Stand Aftermath, which is a roguelite from 2021 that has updated graphics, its own story, and exploration similar to Union City, but in a 3D environment. Make no mistake, when it comes to quality Flash gaming, Con Artist Games don't mess around. This is an interesting game. Portal the Flash version came out on October 9th, 2007, the day before the real Portal came out. Now, I don't know if you might remember, or were too young, or just weren't born yet, but back when Portal came out, it was a huge phenomenon in gaming that blew everyone's minds. Valve was at the top of their game when this released, as it was only 3 years after Half-Life 2 came out. For this version of Portal though, it was pretty big mostly just in the Flash game community, but that didn't stop it from leaving an impact. There's been an hour-long documentary on YouTube about the influence it's had, and the puzzles in this version were remade in 3D as a map pack for the actual game, so it came around full circle. It's essentially just Portal translated into a 2D side-scroller. If you don't know Portal, it's a puzzle game where you have a portal gun that fires 2 different kinds of portals that are linked together so you can go through one and come out the other, and you use it to solve all kinds of physics puzzles in a big science facility. For the Flash version, the puzzles are all different from its official counterpart, so it's not necessarily a direct port of the game, but more like a reimagining of it. The game has puzzles that are on par with some of the more difficult puzzles in the main games, and it has a decent amount of content. I recommend this game if you're wanting to take a break from the more action-oriented games on Newgrounds in favor of something slower and more methodical. This is a real OG Flash game from 2003, so it basically qualifies for a veteran's discount today. This one was developed by XGen Studios. It's a simulation of living as a stick figure guy in a city that's on a floating island for some reason. I should mention as just a little aside that stick figure stuff was pretty popular in Flash at the time because, well, I mean, they're stick figures. They're not exactly hard to draw. A lot of stick figure Flash games and animations came out around this time that really pushed the boundaries in terms of the violence, and they're stick figures, so no one really cared that much. But man, some of these just had oodles and oodles of blood and gore. This game isn't really all that violent though, but it does let you participate in some naughty activity when you meet a guy down an alleyway next to the pawn shop, and he asks you if you want... Apart from the naughty Badman activities, you could go to work at the local McSticks, go to college to increase your intelligence, go to the gym to get stronger, get in fights at the bar, and lots of other stuff. The main goal is basically to work your way up to get better and better paying jobs until you eventually become a CEO. Beyond that, there's even stuff like stocks, running for mayor, and you can take buses to other parts of the map too. Overall, Stick RPG is a classic of the site's golden days, and a reminder of a time when all we needed was some stick figure violence to be entertained on the internet. Truly better times. So for this section, I just have some honorable mentions that I wanted to get across, because there's honestly just way too many games for me to include them all in this video. So here we go. Ray Parts 1 and 2 were these interactive movie type games where they were sort of similar to the Henry Stickmin games in that they combined animation with gameplay. You basically had a series of scenarios and different choices in those scenarios, and you basically got to choose what you wanted to do. Sometimes it would be just a matter of, what your preference is. Other times it's a case of right or wrong. And the story is kind of violent, but it's also kind of goofy and comedic as well. And there's also some liberal use of a slur in the first game, just so you know. These were games I played when I was really young too, and I didn't really understand a whole lot of what was going on. I just saw that it was guys with guns, and I liked it. So yeah, they're a bit dated now, but the core of what's here is good. It also does have the obvious South Park aesthetic to it, which at the time when I was a kid, I did know that South Park existed and that it was an adult show that I wasn't allowed to watch. So that also kind of added to the whole, ooh, I'm getting away with, apparently the creator of these games, Phil Collins, is remaking the first game, and it has a different art style, which, I'll be honest, I don't really like. I kind of prefer the OG South Park aesthetic. It just kind of suits the games. Sift Heads. This was another one that I remember from back in the day. I don't remember which ones I played because there were so many of them, but for this one I played the first one, the third one, first one, the fourth one, and the fifth one, I think. I'm actually gonna live check now. So yeah, for this one I played the first, second, fourth, and fifth ones. I think I remember playing the fifth one back in the day, and I also played the fourth one about a year ago when I was revisiting the site. So yeah, that's about as much as I can remember from this series. But yeah, these were the games that basically popularized the whole sniper genre of games that are pretty popular on mobile nowadays, but back in the day, before mobile games, it was all Flash. So this is where it all started. The games kind of vary in quality. Some of them have good qualities in some aspects and not so good qualities in other aspects, but the series did get better over time. The story was kind of crazy, just all over the place, but that was what Flash was all about back in the day. So overall, I like these games just for the fact that they bring me back to that early era internet, where a lot of stuff was edgy and admittedly kind of try-hardish, but ultimately I think charming, in my opinion. So, douchebag. Yeah, that was a thing back in the day. Not just on Newgrounds, but pretty much everywhere. There was Jersey Shore and Justin Bieber, Ashton Kutcher, all these guys that, they had a certain look about them that people liked to make fun of. And these games kind of contributed to that. I won't go into detail about a whole lot of these games because they're kind of just all the same. And I didn't even play a whole bunch of the games. I only played Douchebag Life just to see what it was like. These weren't games that I played back in the day, but they did make the rounds on the YouTube Let's Play train about 10 years ago. So this was a game based off the Madness Combat series on Newgrounds, which is a pretty iconic series. And I'm going to talk about that in the next episode where we're going over the animations on the site, but for now we're just going to talk about the game here. And by talk about it, I mean be salty, because I'm not good at this game, and I didn't really try too hard with it because it seemed like it was very impossible to make progress. I didn't play the story mode because I just wanted to see what the game itself was like, so maybe I'll do the story at some point in the future. But the arena felt like it was just, I don't know, it felt like the Mad Moxie Arena DLC in Borderlands 1, where it's just endless enemies coming at you, and eventually you just get overwhelmed and you're not really given a fair advantage when it comes to the enemies that you face later on. Because you have to defeat enemies to get money, but then the more enemies you defeat, the higher in difficulty they become as the waves go on. And then eventually, you just end up with guys that can just shoot you and you can't do nothing about it. And yes, I know you can buy guns and allies and stuff. I mean, first off, I don't know how the ally thing works. I bought an ally and I tried to assign him to my team. It didn't work. So I don't know, I must be doing something wrong there. And also, you don't get enough money to buy enough guns to keep the momentum of the progression going. So, I don't know. Maybe I just suck at the game, but, I won't blame the game because I know it's a classic and lots of people love it, so I'm not gonna bash it. And like I said, I haven't tried out the story, so there's probably some stuff I'm missing there that'll make it easier when I go back to the arena. So we're at the end of my list of games for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you liked my picks, then tell me what you liked about them. If you didn't, then screw you. Not really, but whatever. So tune in next time where I'm going to talk about animations on the site. Thanks again for watching.